I know the difference between a hunter's mistake and a sniper's precision. I spent 12 years in the Delta Force, calculating wind speed and drop rates to take lives from a mile away. So when the sheriff stood on my porch and told me a billionaire accidentally put a high-caliber round through my wife's heart because he thought she was a deer, I didn't cry. I went cold. That wasn't an accident. That was a confirmed kill. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. It was a Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday that feels like it's going to stretch on forever until you're old and gray. I was in the garage, working on the engine of my old truck. Grease on my hands, the smell of oil and gasoline in the air. It was the life Tessa and I had built. Quiet, simple, far away from the sand and the noise of my past deployments. I had put my rifle in a safe and locked it away the day I married her. I promised her I was done with violence. I promised her I was just Mason now, not Sergeant. Not a weapon. Then a cruiser pulled into the driveway. No siren, just the crunch of gravel under heavy tires. I wiped my hands on a rag, watching Sheriff Grant step out. We knew each other. Small towns are like that. But Grant wouldn't look me in the eye. He kept adjusting his belt, looking at the ground, then at the sky, anywhere but at me. That's the first sign of a man carrying a weight he's too weak to hold. Mason, he said. His voice was thin. We need to talk. I didn't move. My pulse didn't even jump. Training takes over in moments like this. You assess the threat. You scan the perimeter. But the threat wasn't physical. It was emotional, and I had no armor for it. Where is she? I asked. I didn't ask what happened. I just needed location. There was an accident near the North Ridge, Grant said, finally looking up. His eyes were watery. Near Victor's estate. Tessa, she was hiking. Victor was out hunting. He says he saw movement in the brush. He thought it was a buck. The world stopped spinning. The birds went silent. The wind died. He shot her. My voice sounded like it was coming from someone else. A stranger standing 5 feet away. She didn't make it, Mason. I'm so sorry. I didn't fall to my knees. I didn't scream. I just turned around, walked into the garage, and picked up the wrench I had been using. I gripped it until my knuckles turned white, feeling the cold steel bite into my palm. The pain was the only thing telling me I was still alive. Tessa. My Tessa. The woman who planted daisies in the window boxes because she said the world needed more soft things. The woman who pulled me out of the darkness after my last tour. Gone. Because some billionaire played soldier in the woods. Where is she? I asked again. County General, Grant said. But Mason, listen to me. Victor's people are already there. Don't go down there tearing the place apart. It's a mess. I walked past him to my truck. I'm not going to tear it apart, Grant. I'm going to identify my wife. The drive to the hospital was a blur of gray highway and red rage. My mind kept trying to reject the intel. Tessa didn't hike near the North Ridge. She hated that side of the valley. It was steep, rocky, and owned entirely by Victor, a tech mogul who treated our town like his personal playground. He had fences 8 feet high, signs warning of prosecution. Tessa was a rule follower. She wouldn't trespass. None of this tracked. And when things don't track, you're missing intel. I pulled up to the emergency entrance and slammed the truck into park. Before I could even reach the sliding doors, 2 men in dark suits stepped in front of me. They weren't cops. They were private security. Earpieces. Bulging jackets. The stance of men who are paid to intimidate. Sir, this area is restricted right now, one of them said. He put a hand out. I looked at his hand, then at his face. I'm Mason. My wife is inside. We understand, Mr. Mason, the second suit said. Mr. Victor's legal team is inside speaking with the doctors. They want to ensure everything is handled with the utmost respect before you see her. Respect. I stepped into his personal space. I smelled expensive cologne and fear. You have 3 seconds to move, or I will remove you. And I won't use my hands. I let the soldier out. Just a little. just enough for them to see the look in my eyes that says I have done things in dark rooms that they only see in movies. They moved. I pushed through the doors. The hospital hallway was quiet, too quiet. Nurses were whispering in huddles. And there, standing outside the trauma room, was a phalanx of lawyers. Suits that cost more than my house. And in the middle of them sat Victor. He didn't look like a man who had just accidentally killed a woman. He looked like a man annoyed that his afternoon had been interrupted. He was typing on his phone. When he saw me, he stood up. He was tall, polished, soft hands that had never worked a day in his life. "Mason," he said. He didn't offer a hand. "This is a tragedy. A terrible, terrible accident." The sun was in my eyes. The brush was thick. "I've already spoken to the chief of police. We are prepared to handle all the arrangements. The funeral, the burial, everything. You won't have to spend a dime." He was talking about money. My wife's body was cooling in the next room, and he was talking about his checkbook. I walked right up to him. The lawyers tensed, ready to intervene. "You shot her," I said. My voice was a low growl. "It was a mistake," Victor said, his face arranging itself into a practiced mask of sympathy. "I mistook her for game. I am an expert hunter, usually. This has never happened." "Expert hunter," I repeated. I pushed past him and opened the trauma room door. The air inside was cold. Antiseptic. Under a white sheet lay the shape of my entire world. I walked over. My legs felt heavy, like I was wading through mud. I pulled the sheet back. Tessa looked like she was sleeping. Her face was pale, untouched. But her chest, the sheet was soaked in red. I have seen gunshot wounds. Hundreds of them. I know what a hunting round does. It tears. It destroys. I looked closer at the entry wound. It was center mass. Dead center. A hunter panicking, shooting into brush at a moving target. Hits the shoulder, the gut, the leg. They don't hit the exact center of the heart unless they are aiming for it. And then I saw it. A bruise on her wrist. Faint. Purple, shaped like fingers. She hadn't just been walking. Someone had grabbed her. I covered her face gently, my hand trembling for the first time. I kissed her forehead. It was already cold. "I've got you, baby," I whispered. "I've got you." I walked back out into the hallway. Victor was still there, checking his watch. "Did you see her?" Victor asked. "We should get the paperwork started. My team has a non-disclosure agreement prepared, just standard procedure for the settlement release. I don't want your money," I said. The hallway went silent. Victor looked confused, like I was speaking a foreign language. "Excuse me. It's $5 million, Mason, for your pain and suffering." "I don't want your money," I said again, stepping closer. "And I don't believe your story." Victor's eyes narrowed. The mask slipped, just for a second. I saw the predator underneath. The arrogance. "Be careful, Mason. Accidents happen. You're a mechanic. You fix trucks. Don't try to fix this. You'll just break yourself." He turned to his lawyers. "Let's go. The sheriff is waiting for my statement." They swept out of the hallway like a dark tide, leaving me alone in the fluorescent glare. I wasn't a mechanic. Not really. That was just what I did to forget. But looking at their retreating backs, I realized I couldn't be a mechanic anymore. I went back into the room with my wife. I needed to see one more thing. I checked her shoes. If she had been hiking on the North Ridge, her boots would be covered in red clay. That's the only soil up there. I lifted the sheet at the bottom of the bed. Her hiking boots were clean. Perfectly clean. She hadn't walked to the ridge. She had been taken there. The rage that filled me then wasn't the hot, explosive anger of a husband. It was the cold, calculated resolve of a soldier behind enemy lines. Victor thought he had shot a deer. He thought he had paid off a grieving widower. He didn't know he had just activated a sleeper cell. I took out my phone and dialed the one number I hadn't called in 6 years. The number for the old team. "It's Mason," I said when the line clicked open. "I need a satellite sweep of the North Ridge. Timestamp, 1,400 hours today." "Mason." The voice on the other end cracked. "You've been dark for a long time. Is everything okay?" I looked at my wife's clean boots. "No," I said. I'm hunting. They say grief comes in waves, but that's a lie. Grief is a riptide. It drags you under and holds you there until your lungs burn. I sat in Tessa's favorite armchair, staring at the front door, waiting for her to walk in and tell me this was all a sick joke. The house was too quiet, the kind of silence that rings in your ears. But the silence didn't last. It was broken by the sound of an expensive engine purring in my driveway. I didn't get up immediately. I watched through the window as a black sedan, polished to a mirror shine, parked next to my rusted truck. A man in a charcoal suit stepped out. He wasn't Victor. He was younger, sharper, a shark in Italian leather. I opened the door before he could knock. "Mr. Mason," he said, holding a leather briefcase like a shield. "My name is Julian. I represent Victor's legal counsel. May I come in?" "No," I said. I blocked the doorway. My house was a sanctuary. I wasn't letting the enemy inside the wire. Julian didn't blink. He was used to people hating him. It was part of the job description. "I understand your hostility. Truly. But Mr. Victor is devastated by the accident. He wants to ensure you are taken care of during this transition." He pulled a thick, cream-colored envelope from his jacket pocket. It had my name on it in elegant calligraphy. It looked like a wedding invitation. "What is that?" I asked, though I already knew. "It's a gesture," Julian said, his voice smooth as oil. "Compassionate assistance. Victor knows you rely on a single income. He knows funeral costs are high. He wants to alleviate that burden." He held the envelope out. I didn't take it. "Open it," I said. Julian hesitated, then slid a manicured finger under the flap. He pulled out a check and held it up. I saw the numbers. $2 million. For a mechanic in a small town, that was lottery money. That was quit your job and move to an island money. "There is a small condition attached," Julian said softly, seeing me stare at the numbers. He pulled a document from his briefcase. A standard non-disclosure agreement. It simply states that you acknowledge this was a tragic hunting accident, and you agree not to pursue further litigation or speak to the press. It allows everyone to heal. I looked at the check. Then I looked at the document. "Heal?" I asked quietly. "You think this is about healing? It's about closure, Mason. Victor is a powerful man. A public trial would drag Tessa's name through the mud. It would take years. You'd go bankrupt fighting him. This is dignity." I laughed. It was a dry, broken sound. "Dignity? You're buying my silence. You're buying my wife's life for the price of one of his sports cars." "It's $2 million, Julian pressed, losing his patience slightly. "Take the win, Mason. Don't let pride ruin your future." I reached out and took the check. Julian relaxed, a smug little smile touching his lips. He thought he had me. He thought everyone had a price. I looked at the signature. Victor Sterling. Even his signature was arrogant. Big, looping letters that took up too much space. Slowly, deliberately, I tore the check in half. The sound was loud in the quiet morning air. "Ryup." Julian's smile vanished. "That is a mistake." I tore it again, and again, until the $2 million was just blue and white confetti in my hand. I let the pieces fall onto the dirty porch floor, right over his polished shoes. "You tell your boss," I said, my voice dropping to that dangerous register I hadn't used since Afghanistan, "that he can't buy his way out of hell. Tessa wasn't a deer, and I'm not a whore." Julian stepped back, adjusting his tie nervously. "You're making an enemy of a man who owns this state, Mason. The sheriff, the judge, the bank that holds your mortgage, they all answer to him. If you refuse this, he will bury you." "Let him try," I said. "But tell him one thing for me." "What?" Julian snapped. "Tell him to keep his head down." Julian stared at me, his face pale. He turned on his heel and marched back to the sedan. I watched him drive away, kicking up dust. I looked down at the torn check scattered on the wood. It wasn't just an insult. It was a confirmation. Innocent men don't offer $2 million the day after a hunting accident. Innocent men don't bring NDAs to a grieving husband. Victor was scared. He was trying to pour concrete over the truth before it could dry. I went back inside and walked to the kitchen. I needed coffee. I needed to think. But as I passed the window, I saw something flash in the distance. I stopped. I moved to the side of the curtain, peering out. About 300 yards down the road, parked near the tree line, was a gray utility van. No markings. Tinted windows. It hadn't moved since Julian arrived. I grabbed my binoculars from the counter. I dialed in the focus. There was a man in the driver's seat. He wasn't looking at the road. He was looking through a camera lens, pointed right at my front door. They weren't just trying to buy me off. They were watching me. My blood ran cold, then hot. They thought intimidation would work. They thought I was just a mechanic who would crumble under pressure. I put the binoculars down and walked to the closet in the hallway. I pushed aside the coats and the old vacuum cleaner until I reached the back panel. I pried it loose. Behind the drywall was a small, fireproof box. I keyed in the code. Click. Inside wasn't money. It was my old gear. A burner phone, a recorder, and a hard drive I used to keep backups of. Everything. Victor wanted a war. He wanted to treat my life like a business transaction. Fine. I closed the box and whispered to the empty house. Business is open. 3 days after the funeral, the town was already moving on. That's the thing about tragedies in places like this. They are gossip for a week, then history. But Victor wasn't letting it fade. He was branding it. I received the invitation in the mail. A thick, textured card embossed with gold leaf. The Sterling Foundation Annual Conservation Gala, in loving memory of Tessa Mason. He was throwing a party. For my wife. I stood in my kitchen, gripping the card until the edges bit into my skin. He killed her on Tuesday, tried to buy me off on Wednesday, and now, on Saturday, he was using her name to raise money for his tax write-offs. It was a level of sickness I couldn't comprehend. I shouldn't have gone. I should have stayed home, cleaned my rifle, and planned. But I needed to see him. I needed to see the enemy in his natural habitat. I put on my only suit. It was black, simple, bought for a friend's wedding years ago. It felt tight across the shoulders. I didn't shave. I wanted to look exactly like what I was, a man walking through a nightmare. The gala was held at Victor's main lodge, a massive timber and stone fortress that sat on the edge of the very woods where Tessa died. The driveway was lined with luxury cars. Valets in red vests were running back and forth. Laughter drifted through the open double doors. I walked past the security team. I recognized the man from the hospital, the one I threatened. He saw me, tapped his earpiece, but stepped aside. They knew better than to stop the grieving widower at his own wife's memorial. It would be bad PR. The inside of the lodge was a cathedral to death. That's the only way I can describe it. The walls were lined with heads. Elk, moose, bear, lions. Glass eyes stared down from every angle, frozen in their final moments of terror. The air smelled of expensive perfume, old leather, and roasted meat. The crowd parted as I walked through. The whispers started immediately. That's him. That's the husband. Poor man. He looks dangerous, doesn't he? I ignored them. My eyes were locked on the stage at the far end of the great hall. Victor was there, holding a microphone, basking in the spotlight. He wore a tuxedo that fit him perfectly. He looked like royalty. Tessa was a lover of nature, Victor was saying, his voice thick with practiced emotion. She understood the delicate balance of the wild. It is a tragedy that she was taken from us by the very wilderness she adored. But tonight, we ensure her spirit lives on. I felt the bile rising in my throat. He was rewriting history in real time. He was making himself the steward of her memory. To honor her, Victor continued, gesturing to a large easel covered in a velvet cloth behind him. I have commissioned a permanent addition to the lodge's gallery, so she will always be part of this estate. He gripped the cloth. The room went silent. I stepped forward, pushing past the mayor and his wife. I needed to see this. Victor pulled the cloth down. The breath left my lungs. It was a photograph of Tessa, a beautiful, candid shot I had never seen before. She was laughing, looking over her shoulder, sunlight catching her hair. It was vibrant and full of life. But it was where he placed it that made my blood freeze. The easel wasn't standing alone. It was positioned on the main wall, directly between the mounted head of a massive grizzly bear and the antlers of a prize stag. He hadn't framed a memorial. He had mounted a trophy. The symbolism was screaming at me. To him, she wasn't a person. She was just another prize he had bagged. Another beautiful thing he had captured and put on display to show his dominance. The applause started. Polite, rhythmic clapping. People were wiping tears, nodding at Victor's generosity. They didn't see it. They didn't see the sickness of putting a dead woman's photo next to the things he had hunted and killed. But Victor saw it. He looked over the crowd, scanning faces until he found mine. He didn't look away. He didn't look guilty. He smiled. It was a small, tight smile. A message. I won. She is mine now. The room started to spin. The heat was suffocating. I realized then that this wasn't just about covering up a mistake. You don't display a mistake on your wall. You hide mistakes. You bury them. This was pride. I turned and walked out. I couldn't breathe in that air anymore. I pushed through the double doors and out into the cool night air. My heart was hammering against my ribs, not from grief, but from a sudden, terrifying clarity. I leaned against a stone pillar, gasping for air. Quite a tribute, isn't it? I turned. A woman was standing in the shadows of the porch, smoking a thin cigarette. She had dark hair and eyes that looked too old for her face. I recognized her vaguely. Natalie, maybe. She worked at the local gallery. He treats everything like a collection, she said quietly, not looking at me. Art. Animals. People. Where did he get that photo? I asked, my voice rasping. I've never seen it. She took a long drag of her cigarette. He took it. Last summer. At the lake house. My stomach dropped. Tessa never went to the lake house. She didn't know Victor socially. The woman turned to me then, and her expression was filled with a pity that cut deeper than a knife. Oh, honey. You really don't know, do you? Know what? Tessa was at the lake house a lot, she whispered. And she wasn't hiking when she died, Mason. She was running. She flicked her cigarette into the bushes and walked back inside, leaving me alone in the dark. I looked back through the window. I saw Victor shaking hands, accepting praise, standing beneath the wall of dead things. And beneath the picture of my wife. He didn't just kill her. He knew her. I walked to my truck, my hands shaking so hard I could barely get the keys in the ignition. I didn't go home. I drove straight to the one place I hadn't been able to face yet. I drove to the storage unit where the police had dumped Tessa's personal effects. The clothes she died in. Her backpack. I needed to see what she was carrying. I needed to know why my wife, the woman who told me everything, was secretly meeting a billionaire hunter at a lake house I didn't know existed. The hunt was over for Victor. He had his trophy on the wall. But my hunt was just beginning. I brought the box of Tessa's things home and set it on the kitchen table. It was a cardboard coffin, sealed with evidence tape that had been cut open and resealed. Inside were the clothes she died in, a flannel shirt with a hole in the chest, her boots, her watch. The police had returned them like they were returning a lost wallet, not the last remnants of a human being. But I didn't open the box to cry over her clothes. I opened it because of what the woman at the party said. She was running. If Tessa was running, she wouldn't have carried the things that mattered on her. She was smart. She was careful. If she knew she was walking into a trap, she would have left a breadcrumb trail. I dumped the backpack out. Nothing. A water bottle, a granola bar, a map. It was too clean. It was the inventory of a casual hiker, not a woman with secrets. I looked around our bedroom. It looked the same as it always had, the unmade bed, the book on her nightstand. But now, the room felt like a puzzle box. Somewhere in here, she had hidden the truth. I started with the closet. I checked pockets, shoe boxes, the lining of her winter coats. Nothing. I moved to the bathroom, checking under the sink, inside the tank of the toilet. Nothing. Panic started to set in. Had I misread her? Was I just a grieving husband chasing ghosts? I sat down on the edge of the bed, putting my head in my hands. I looked at her nightstand. It was an antique oak piece she had refinished herself. She loved that table. She used to joke that if the house burned down, she'd carry the nightstand out on her back. I frowned. I leaned down and pulled the top drawer out completely, setting it on the floor. I reached into the empty cavity of the table, feeling the underside of the wood. My fingers brushed against something cold and plastic. Duct tape. I peeled it back. A phone dropped into my hand. It wasn't her normal iPhone. It was a cheap, prepaid Android burner. The screen was cracked. My heart hammered against my ribs. Tessa was a librarian. She baked bread on Sundays. She didn't have burner phones taped under furniture. Unless she was living a life I knew nothing about. I pressed the power button. It had enough battery to flicker to life. A pattern lock appeared on the screen. I tried her birthday. Incorrect. I tried our anniversary. Incorrect. I tried the day we bought the house. Incorrect. I closed my eyes, trying to think like her. If she hid this for me to find, the code had to be something only I would know. Something private. I typed in the date of my last deployment. The day I came home safe. Click. The phone unlocked. I went straight to the messages. There was only one conversation thread. The contact was saved simply as V. I scrolled back to the beginning. The messages went back 6 months. V. Did you review the files? Tessa. Yes. You can't do this. It's illegal. V. It's necessary. And you're going to help me bury it. My grip tightened on the phone. This wasn't a love affair. This was coercion. I scrolled down, reading months of manipulation. Tessa trying to back out. V threatening to ruin her credit. Then threatening the house. Then threatening me. V. Mason has a nice life. Would be a shame if his disability benefits were flagged for fraud. I have friends in the VA. Tessa. Do as you're told. She was protecting me. She was staying silent to keep my world from falling apart. I scrolled to the very bottom. The last message. Sent the day she died. Timestamp. 1:30 p.m. 30 minutes before the accident. V. Last chance. Bring the hard drive to the North Ridge. Come alone, or I send the team to your house. Tessa. I'm coming. Just leave Mason out of this. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. She wasn't hiking. She wasn't meeting a lover. She was meeting her blackmailer. She went up to that ridge to trade evidence for my safety, and Victor killed her for it. The hard drive, I whispered. The text mentioned a hard drive. I looked back at the empty hole in the nightstand. There was no drive there, just the phone. If she didn't give it to him, and she must not have, or he wouldn't have killed her, then where was it? I stood up, the phone burning a hole in my hand. The police report said she was found with nothing but her backpack. Victor's security team had secured the scene before the sheriff arrived. They must have swept the body. If she had the drive on her, Victor had it now, and he had killed her to silence whatever was on it. But then I remembered something. A detail from the accident site that the sheriff mentioned in passing. Tessa was found near the ravine edge. The drop-off. If she knew she was about to die, if she saw the gun, she wouldn't have let him win. She would have tossed it. I grabbed my keys. It was pitch black outside, the middle of the night. It didn't matter. I wasn't going to the police. The messages proved Victor had leverage over the authorities. If I showed this phone to the sheriff, it would disappear from the evidence locker by morning. I had to find the leverage she died protecting. I walked out to the truck, threw the burner phone on the passenger seat, and loaded my gear. Flashlight. Rope. And this time, I unlocked the safe in the back. I took out my sidearm. I wasn't a soldier anymore. I wasn't a husband anymore. I was a witness. And I was going back to the kill zone. The North Ridge at 3 a.m. is a graveyard of shadows. The wind howls through the canyons like a wounded animal. I parked my truck a mile out, covering it with the tarpon branches. Victor had cameras on the main road, but he didn't watch the old logging trails. I knew this terrain better than his security team ever would. I didn't hike in. I moved tactically, low and silent. I reached the spot where Tessa died. The police tape was gone, but the ground still told the story. Disturbed earth. Broken branches. And there, near the edge of the cliff, a dark stain in the dirt that the rain hadn't washed away yet. I didn't stop to mourn. I couldn't. I secured my rope to a sturdy pine and rappelled down the ravine face. It was a steep drop, full of jagged shale and thorny brush. If Tessa had thrown the drive, it wouldn't have gone far. I scanned the cliffside with my red lens flashlight, careful not to beam light up toward the estate. I searched for an hour. Nothing. Just rocks and trash. Then, about 40 feet down, caught in the gnarled roots of a dead scrub oak, I saw a glint of silver. I rappelled down, swinging toward the root ball. I reached out, my fingers brushing against cold metal. It was a small, waterproof USB drive. It was scratched, dented from the fall, but intact. I pocketed it and climbed out of hell. By the time I got back to town, the sun was coming up. I didn't go home. They would be watching. I went to the only place in town that still had a shred of integrity, the old library basement where the public records were kept. It had ancient computers that weren't connected to the internet. No cloud. No tracking. I plugged the drive in. The computer whirred and groaned. A folder popped up. Project Eden. I clicked it open. It wasn't just a spreadsheet. It was a manifesto. Hundreds of documents. Soil samples. Water toxicity reports. And emails. Emails between Victor and the state governor. Emails between Victor and the sheriff. I read for 20 minutes, and my blood turned to ice. Victor wasn't just building luxury homes. He was buying up protected wetlands, paying off inspectors to reclassify them as residential zones, and then dumping industrial runoff from his chemical plant directly into the groundwater. Tessa found it. She was an auditor for the county clerk, a job I thought was just paperwork. But she had stumbled onto the biggest environmental crime in the state's history, and she had tried to stop him. The sheriff wasn't just incompetent. He was complicit. His name was on the payroll list in column B. Security consultant, $5,000 per month. I pulled the drive out. I had the smoking gun. But a smoking gun is useless if the people you hand it to are the ones pulling the trigger. I couldn't go to the police. I couldn't go to the state. I needed a lawyer. But not just any lawyer. I needed someone who hated Victor as much as I did. I drove to the bad part of town, past the boarded-up storefronts and the rusted cars. I pulled up to a small, dilapidated office with a peeling sign. Grant Miller, attorney at law. Grant used to be the district attorney. He was a pit bull in court. Then, 5 years ago, he suddenly resigned in disgrace after a drug scandal. Rumor was he was framed. Now I knew who framed him. I kicked the door open. A bell jingled weakly. Grant was asleep at his desk, a half-empty bottle of whiskey next to his head. He looked like a wreck. Unshaven, greasy hair, shirt stained. I slammed the hard drive onto the desk. The sound woke him up. He jumped, knocking the bottle over. "What the hell?" he mumbled, rubbing his eyes. "We're closed. Get out." "Wake up, Grant," I said. "I'm offering you redemption." He squinted at me. "Mason, Jesus, I heard about your wife. I'm sorry, but I don't do wrongful death suits anymore. Go hire a billboard lawyer." "I don't want a suit," I said. "I want a war." I pointed to the drive. "That drive contains proof that Victor Sterling murdered my wife because she found out he's poisoning the county. It also has the emails proving he planted the drugs in your car 5 years ago." Grant froze. The fog of alcohol seemed to clear from his eyes instantly. He looked at the drive, then at me. "You're lying." "Check it," I said. He pulled a laptop from a drawer and plugged it in. I watched his face as he read. His eyes widened. His jaw set. He scrolled faster and faster, muttering curses under his breath. After 10 minutes, he sat back, running a hand through his messy hair. He looked at me, and for the first time in years, the dead look was gone. There was fire there. This is everything," he whispered. "This burns them all. The sheriff, the zoning board, the governor. Can we use it?" I asked. "If we file this in local court, the judge will seal it before the ink dries." "Judge Reynolds is in Victor's pocket too," Grant said, his mind already racing, calculating. We can't just walk in the front door, Mason. They'll kill us before we get a hearing. So what do we do? Grant stood up. He walked to a small safe in the corner, spun the dial, and pulled out a fresh shirt and a tie. He tossed the whiskey bottle into the trash can. It shattered loudly. We don't sue him, Grant said, a cold smile forming on his lips. We destroy him. We make him panic. We make him think he's winning, and then we drop the hammer when the whole world is watching. How? Victor is obsessed with his image, right? His legacy. Grant asked. In 2 weeks, he's hosting the State Conservation Summit. Press from all over the country. Senators. Investors. He's planning to announce his new eco-friendly development. Project Eden, I said. Exactly. That's our stage, Grant said. But first, we need to make him sweat. We need him to think you're just a grieving, crazy husband who doesn't know anything. We need him to get sloppy. I can do crazy, I said. Good, Grant said. Because if we do this, Mason, there's no going back. If we miss, we're dead. I'm already dead, I said, thinking of the empty side of my bed. I'm just a ghost looking for company. Grant extended his hand. Then let's go haunting. We needed more than just files. Files can be doctored, disputed, buried in endless appeals. To take down a king, you don't just need the murder weapon. You need the voice of the victim. Grant spent the next 3 days in his basement office, building a firewall of digital protection around the data. I went back to the house, playing the part of the broken widower. I let the lawn die. I let the mail pile up. I sat on the porch rocking chair for hours, staring at nothing, knowing Victor's surveillance van was still parked down the road, documenting my collapse. But at night, inside, I was dissecting the phone. There was one file type I hadn't checked yet. The audio recorder app. I opened it. There was a single recording, dated 10 minutes before she died. I plugged in my headphones. My hand hovered over the play button. This was the last time I would ever hear her voice. I took a breath and pressed play. The sound of wind. The crunch of dry leaves. Tessa was walking fast, breathing hard. Victor. Her voice came through, tinny but clear. I'm here. Show yourself. A pause. Then, a voice I recognized instantly. Smooth, arrogant. You're persistent, Tessa. I'll give you that. Most people would have taken the bribe and bought a vacation home. I'm not most people, she snapped. I have the soil samples, Victor. I know about the lead levels. I know about the cancer cluster in the East Ward. You're killing kids. Business has costs, Victor said dismissively. And progress requires sacrifice. Hand over the drive, Tessa. No. I'm going to the EPA. I'm going to the press. Then, the sound of movement. A rustle of fabric. You really aren't, Victor said. His voice changed. It went cold. You think because you're a woman I won't hurt you. You think this is a game. Stay back, Tessa yelled. The panic in her voice tore through me. Mason knows. He knows everything. If you touch me, a loud crack. Not a gunshot. A slap. Tessa cried out. Mason is a mechanic, Victor sneered. He's a nobody. He'll mourn you for a year, marry a waitress, and forget you ever existed. No one will miss you, Tessa. You're just a nuisance. Then, the twist that nearly stopped my heart. Besides, Victor said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, who do you think gave me the clearance to dump the waste? Who do you think signed the executive order bypassing the environmental review? Tessa gasped. No, that's impossible. Call him, Victor taunted. Ask your father. The recording ended with a scuffle, then the terrifying, deafening boom of a gunshot. Silence. Then the sound of heavy boots walking away. I ripped the headphones off, my head spinning. Her father. Tessa's father wasn't in the picture. He had left when she was 5. She told me he was a deadbeat who moved to Florida. She never spoke about him. She said he was a nobody. I grabbed the laptop and frantically searched for the name on the executive order Grant had flagged earlier. The signature at the bottom of the authorization document. Senator Conrad Sterling. Sterling. Victor's last name was Sterling. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Tessa wasn't just an auditor. She wasn't just a random victim. Tessa's maiden name was Wild, her mother's name. But if her father was Senator Sterling, that meant Victor wasn't just a corrupt billionaire. He was her cousin. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Tessa had been hiding her lineage her entire life. She was the illegitimate daughter of the most powerful political family in the state. She had changed her name to escape them. And when she found the corruption, she wasn't just fighting a corporation. She was fighting her own blood. And Victor knew. He knew exactly who she was. He didn't just kill an auditor. He killed family. That was why he was so desperate to cover it up. It wasn't just environmental crime. It was fratricide. If the world found out he murdered his own cousin to protect the family fortune, he wouldn't just go to jail. He would be destroyed by the very dynasty he was trying to protect. The phone rang. It was Grant. "Mason, I found something weird in the financial records," Grant said, his voice urgent. "There's a recurring payment from the Sterling Trust Fund, going to an account under the name Tessa Wild. It stopped the day she died." "I know," I said, my voice shaking. "Grant, she was a Sterling." Silence on the other end. "What?" "Victor is her cousin. Her father is the senator. That's why she had access. That's why she could get close enough to find the files. She used her clearance." "My God," Grant whispered. "This isn't a murder case anymore, Mason. This is a political assassination. Does this help us?" I asked. "Help us? Mason, this is the nuclear option. But it makes it 1,000 times more dangerous. If the senator is involved, we aren't just fighting a billionaire. We're fighting the U.S. government. They have resources you can't even imagine." "I don't care," I said. "He killed his own blood. He shot her like an animal." "We need to move," Grant said. "If they know you found that recording, that van outside your house won't be just watching anymore. They'll come in clearing rooms." I looked out the window. The van was still there. But now, the back doors were opening. 3 men in tactical gear were stepping out. No uniforms. Silencers on their rifles. They weren't here to arrest me. They were here to clean up the last loose end. "Grant," I said, racking the slide on my pistol. "Get the files ready. I'm coming to you." "Mason, get out of there." "I am," I said, watching the men approach the porch. "But first, I'm going to send a message." I hung up. I killed the lights. I moved to the hallway, the choke point of the house. I wasn't going to die here. Not tonight. I had a story to finish. The first man kicked in the front door. The wood splintered with a violence that echoed through the silent house. He moved like a pro, fast, checking corners, weapon raised. But he made one mistake. He assumed I was prey. I was in the shadows of the kitchen hallway. I didn't shoot. Gunfire brings the neighbors, and then the cops, and then I'm dead or in a cell. I waited. He stepped onto the creaky floorboard I'd been meaning to fix for 3 years. Creak. I moved. I stepped out, grabbed the barrel of his rifle, and drove the heel of my hand into his chin. His head snapped back. He went down hard. I stripped his weapon and zip-tied his hands before his buddies on the porch even realized he was down. The other 2 hesitated. That was their second mistake. I slipped out the back door, melting into the darkness of the yard. I knew every inch of this property. I crawled through the tall grass, circling behind them. Clear on the ground floor, one whispered into his radio. "Target not acquired." "Check the basement," a voice crackled back. It was Victor. I'd know that arrogant drawl anywhere. He was directing the hit personally. I made it to my truck, which I'd parked facing the service road, engine cold. I didn't start it. I released the parking brake and let gravity take me down the hill, rolling silently into the night. Only when I was a mile away did I turn the key. I drove straight to Grant's office. He was pacing when I arrived, the air thick with tension and stale coffee. "You look like you've been to war," he said, eyeing the tactical vest I'd thrown on. "I have," I said. "They came for me, Grant. 3 of them. Which means Victor knows we have something." "He doesn't know what we have," Grant said, pointing to the whiteboard he'd covered in timelines and arrows. "He's panicking." "That's good. A panicked enemy makes mistakes." He tapped a photo on the board. It was a picture of a young woman with purple hair and a nose ring. Who is she? I asked. Violet Sterling, Grant said. Victor's daughter. The rebellious trust fund kid. She hates her father. She's been arrested 3 times for protesting at his oil refineries. She's the black sheep. And, Grant said, a dangerous glint in his eye. She was the last person to text Tessa before the messages stopped. Look. He pulled up a log on his screen. Violet. Be careful, T. He knows you're looking into Project Eden. He's crazy. Tessa, I have to stop him by. For all of us. She was Tessa's source, I realized. His own daughter tipped her off. Exactly, Grant said. We have the files. We have the audio. But to nail the senator, to nail the whole family, we need a witness. We need someone inside the castle. She'll never talk to us, I said. She's a Sterling. Even if she hates him, she won't send her father to prison. She might, Grant said, if she knows he killed Tessa. She thinks it was an accident, Mason. Everyone does. If we show her the truth. Where is she? She's at the estate, Grant said. Under protective custody, according to her social media. Which means Victor has her locked up so she doesn't cause a scene before the summit. So we have to break into a fortress, extract the billionaire's daughter, and convince her to betray her bloodline, I said flatly. Basically, Grant smiled. It was a grim, wolfish smile. Unless you have a better plan. I looked at the map of Victor's estate on the wall. High walls, cameras, armed guards. It was a suicide mission. I don't have a better plan, I said. But I have a distraction. What kind of distraction? I reached into my bag and pulled out the burner phone. Victor thinks this phone is destroyed. He thinks the evidence is gone. We're going to tell him it's not. We're going to make him think the ghost of Tessa is haunting him. I typed a message on the burner phone. 2. Victor message. The soil remembers what you buried. And so do I. I hit send. Grant watched the screen. You're poking the bear. No, I said, standing up and checking my gear. I'm luring the bear out of the cave. When he gets that text, he's going to scramble his security. He's going to send them hunting for the signal. And while they're looking for a ghost, I'm going to walk right in the front door. We spent the next hour planning. Grant would handle the cyber warfare, pinging the phone off towers in the opposite direction to draw the guards away. I would infiltrate the estate during the shift change. It was madness. It was impossible. But I kept seeing Tessa's face. I kept hearing that slap on the recording. Business has costs. I was going to make sure the cost was higher than Victor could ever pay. One thing, Mason, Grant said as I headed for the door. If you get caught in there, I can't help you. You're on your own. I've been on my own since Tuesday, I said. I drove toward the estate. The sun was rising, painting the sky in blood red. The alliance was formed. A disgraced lawyer and a soldier with nothing to lose. We were going to take down the most powerful family in the state. Or we were going to die trying. The text message hit Victor like a precision airstrike. Grant was monitoring the estate's radio frequencies from his basement. It's chaos, Mason. His voice crackled in my earpiece. Victor just ordered half his perimeter team to the south sector. He thinks the signal is coming from the old water treatment plant. He's screaming at them to find the device. Copy, I whispered. I was prone in the tall grass, 300 yards from the north gate. The bait worked. With the guards drawn south, the north wall was exposed. I moved fast. I scaled the 10-foot stone wall, avoiding the sensors I'd mapped out earlier. I dropped into the manicured gardens of the Sterling estate. It was obscene. Fountains, statues, perfectly trimmed hedges, all paid for with blood money. I moved through the shadows toward the main house. My target was the east wing, Violet's quarters. I slipped through a side entrance used by the catering staff. The house was quiet, but tense. I could hear servants whispering in the kitchen, sensing the mood of their master. I found Violet's room on the second floor. The door was locked from the outside. A digital keypad. Grant, I whispered. I'm at the door. Keypad model X7. On it, Grant replied. Cycling codes. Try 8-4-2-1. I punched it in. Red light. Nope. Okay, try her birthday, Grant said. 0-6-1-5. Green light. Click. I eased the door open. Violet was sitting on the window seat, staring out at the grounds. She looked small, fragile. She was wearing headphones, rocking back and forth. I stepped inside and closed the door. Violet. She spun around, eyes wide. She opened her mouth to scream. Don't, I said, holding up my hands. I'm Mason, Tessa's husband. The scream died in her throat. She stared at me, trembling. Mason, my father said. He said you were crazy. He said you were dangerous. He lied, I said, just like he lied about the accident. I pulled the burner phone from my pocket. I know you were her source, Violet. I know you tried to help her. She slumped against the window, tears welling up. I told her not to come. I told her he was dangerous. But she said she had to stop him. She said the water. The water is poisoning people, I finished. But that's not why he killed her. I saw the confusion on her face. Killed her. It was an accident. He was hunting. Listen to me, I said, stepping closer. Hunters don't shoot women in the center of the chest by mistake. And they don't have their lawyers waiting at the hospital before the body arrives. I hit play on the recording. Violet listened. She heard her father's voice. She heard the threat, the slap, and then the revelation about the senator. When the gunshot echoed from the tiny speaker, Violet collapsed onto the floor, sobbing silently. It was the sound of a daughter's world shattering. Her father wasn't just strict. He wasn't just a businessman. He was a monster. He knew, she whispered, her voice broken. He knew she was family. And he chose the money, I said. He chose the legacy. Violet looked up at me. Her eyes were red, but the fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard anger. It was the same anger I felt. It was sterling blood after all. What do we do? She asked. The summit is tomorrow, I said. He's going to announce Project Eden to the world. He thinks he's untouchable. He keeps the original files in his safe, Violet said, standing up. The physical copies. The ones with the senator's real signature. Not the digital ones. The ink. Where is the safe? In his study. Behind the painting of the hunt. Of course it was. I can get you in, she said. But you can't just steal them. He'll notice. We need to expose him publicly. We need to do it when he can't hide. I have a plan for that, I said. But I need you to stay here. Act normal. Can you do that? She wiped her face. She looked at herself in the mirror, fixing her hair. She put on a mask of indifference. I've been acting my whole life, Mason, she said. I can do one more day. Good. I moved to the door. I'm leaving. When the time comes. Be ready. Mason, she called out. I turned back. Make him hurt, she said. For her. I nodded. I'm going to mount his head on the gate. I slipped back out into the hall. The extraction was successful. I had the witness. I had the inside man. But as I reached the garden wall, my earpiece buzzed. Mason, get out. Now. Grant yelled. They found the decoy. They're sweeping back to the house. Floodlights snapped on. The garden was bathed in blinding white light. Intruder in Sector 4. A voice boomed over the PA. I was exposed. I sprinted for the wall. Dogs were barking now. Deep, guttural barks. Dobermans. I hit the wall and scrambled up. A set of jaws snapped inches from my boot. I rolled over the top and dropped to the other side just as a gunshot cracked the air. Stone chips sprayed my face. I ran. I ran through the woods, branches whipping my face, lungs burning. I didn't stop until I reached the truck. I tore out of there, tires spinning in the mud. I looked in the rearview mirror. The estate was lit up like a Christmas tree. Victor was awake. He knew someone had been inside, but he didn't know who. And he didn't know that his own daughter was now the dagger held at his throat. He thought he was the hunter. Tomorrow, he would learn what it feels like to be the prey. The morning of the summit dawned gray and heavy. The air felt charged, like the moments before a thunderstorm. I sat in Grant's office, cleaning my nails with a knife, watching the news feed on his laptop. Live coverage from the Sterling estate. Reporters in sleek coats standing in front of the massive iron gates. Limousines arriving. The governor. Senators. Industry titans. Victor was hosting the world. "Are we ready?" Grant asked. He was wearing his old court suit. It was a little tight, but he looked sharp. He looked like the prosecutor he used to be. "We're ready," I said. "This plan relies on a lot of moving parts, Mason. If Violet gets cold feet, if the projection fails." "It won't fail," I said. We loaded up the van. Not with guns. With equipment. High-lumen projectors. Massive speakers. And a server rack. We drove to the perimeter of the estate. The security was tighter than the Pentagon. Checkpoints. Bomb dogs. But we weren't trying to get inside. We set up on a hill overlooking the main entrance. The gates were the focal point, 30 feet high, solid steel, facing the arrival plaza where the press was gathered. "Grant," I said, looking through the binoculars. "Victor is coming out." Victor stepped onto a podium set up in the driveway. He looked impeccable. He raised his hands, silencing the crowd. "Welcome," he boomed. "Today, we mark a new era. Project Eden is not just a development. It is a promise of harmony between man and nature." I checked my watch. Now. Grant hit the enter key. On the massive screens inside the event, the screens meant to show Victor's glossy presentation, the image flickered. Then it went black. The crowd murmured. Victor tapped the microphone, annoyed. "Technical difficulties, it seems. A moment, please." But it wasn't a glitch. The screens lit up again. But not with Victor's slides. They lit up with a document. A soil toxicity report. Subject: Project Eden site lead levels. For 100% above legal limit arsenic levels. Critical recommendation: do not build. Evacuate immediate area. The murmurs turned to gasps. Victor's face went pale. He signaled to his team to cut the feed. But then, the audio started. We blasted it through our own speakers, overriding the event sound system. Tessa's voice, clear and terrified, echoed over the estate. "I have the soil samples, Victor. I know about the cancer cluster." Victor froze. He looked around wildly. "Cut the power. Cut it now." But the audio continued. "Who do you think gave me the clearance? Who do you think signed the executive order? Call him. Ask your father." The cameras swung from Victor to Senator Sterling, who was sitting in the front row. The senator stood up, looking like he was about to vomit. And then came the twist we had saved for the end. The one even I didn't see coming until Violet sent me the file that morning. The screens changed again. A video appeared. It was grainy security footage. From inside Victor's study. Dated 2 years ago. It showed Victor and the senator standing over a map. "The water table is the problem, Dad," Victor was saying. "If we poison the well, the farmers will have to sell. The land becomes worthless. We buy it for pennies, clean it up with taxpayer Superfund money, and build the resort." The senator nodded. "Do it. But keep my name off the cleanup contracts." The crowd went dead silent. This wasn't just negligence. This wasn't just cutting corners. It was a premeditated attack on their own community. They had poisoned the water on purpose to drive down property values. They had given children cancer to save on real estate costs. The press went feral. Flashes exploded like strobe lights. Reporters were shouting questions. Victor was shaking. He looked at the camera, then at the crowd. He looked trapped. And then, the gates opened. Not for a limo. Violet walked out. She was holding a thick red folder. The physical evidence. She walked straight up to the podium. Victor lunged for her. "Violet, don't you dare." But 2 FBI agents stepped out from the crowd. They had been waiting. Grant had sent the digital files to a contact in the bureau an hour ago. They just needed the visual confirmation. They intercepted Victor. They slammed him against the podium. Violet didn't even look at him. She walked to the microphone. "My name is Violet Sterling," she said, her voice trembling but strong. "And this is the confession my cousin Tessa died for." She held up the folder. My father killed her, she said, and my grandfather helped him cover it up. The senator tried to run. He actually tried to push through the crowd, but the flashing lights of police cruisers were already swarming the driveway. Grant and I watched from the hill. We got them, Grant whispered. We actually got them. I lowered the binoculars. I saw Victor being handcuffed. I saw the look on his face. It wasn't arrogance anymore. It was pure, unadulterated fear. He looked up at the hill. He couldn't see me, but he knew. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumph. I just felt the weight lifting. It's not over, I said. He still has lawyers. He still has money. Not anymore, Grant said, tapping the screen. Look at the stock ticker. Sterling Industries stock was in freefall. It had dropped 60% in 2 minutes. Investors were fleeing. The assets would be frozen by noon. He was broke. He was exposed. He was done. But I had one last thing to do. I packed up the gear. You handle the press, Grant. I have a delivery to make. Where are you going? To the gate, I said. I promised. I drove down the hill. The chaos was absolute. But I maneuvered the truck through the press vans and the police cars. I pulled up right next to the massive iron gate where Victor's family crest hung. I got out. I was holding a large, framed photograph. It was the picture of Tessa, the one Victor had stolen. I had taken it back from the lodge during my escape the night before. I walked up to the gate. The cameras turned to me. The husband, the widower. I didn't say a word. I took a roll of heavy-duty duct tape from my pocket. I taped the picture of Tessa over the Sterling family crest, right in the center. Now, her face was the first thing you saw when you entered. She wasn't a trophy inside. She was the guardian at the gate. She was the one who brought it all down. I stepped back. I looked at her smile. You got him, baby, I whispered. I got back in my truck and drove away, leaving the billionaire in cuffs and my wife's memory mounting his legacy. The trial of the century didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened right there on the asphalt driveway in front of the world. But the legal dismantling took months. I watched it all from a distance. Victor was denied bail. The judge, finally sensing which way the wind was blowing, and terrified of being implicated in the emails, threw the book at him. The senator resigned in disgrace the next morning, claiming health reasons, but the FBI indictment for conspiracy and fraud was waiting for him at his hospital bed. The Sterling Empire, built on a century of blood and oil, crumbled like a sandcastle at high tide. Grant became a celebrity overnight. The disgraced lawyer who took down a dynasty. He got his license back. He got his reputation back. He opened a new firm, Miller and Associates, dedicated to environmental justice. He offered me a job as an investigator. I turned him down. I'm not an investigator, Grant. I told him over coffee at the diner. I was just a husband. You were a hell of a soldier, Mason, he said. We could use you. My war is over, I said. I went back to the house. It was quiet now. The surveillance van was gone. The threat was gone. But the silence was different. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. I spent weeks fixing things. I painted the porch. I mowed the lawn. I planted new flowers in Tessa's window boxes. Daisies, just like she liked. But there was one piece of unfinished business. I drove up to the Sterling estate one last time. It had been seized by the feds. The gates were chain-locked. The grass was overgrown. The fountains were dry. It looked like a tomb. I walked up to the main gate. The picture of Tessa was still there, weathered by the rain, sun-bleached, but still there. No one had dared to remove it. It had become a sort of shrine. People had left flowers, candles, notes thanking her for saving the town's water. I carefully peeled the tape back. I took the photo down. She didn't belong on this gate of corruption. She belonged home. I looked through the bars. The mansion was dark, empty. The trophy room inside was gathering dust. The mounted heads of the lions and bears were staring into nothingness. Victor was in a 6x8 cell in a federal penitentiary. He would be there for the rest of his life. He was surrounded by concrete walls, just like he had surrounded himself with stone walls his whole life. But now, he had no servants, no power, No legacy. He was just a man who made a mistake. He shot the wrong doe. I got back in my truck. I placed the photo on the passenger seat. Let's go home, Tess, I said. I drove away from the estate, watching it shrink in the rearview mirror until it disappeared around the bend. I went to the cemetery. It was a beautiful day. The sun was warm. The birds were singing. I sat by her grave. The headstone was simple. Tessa Mason, beloved wife, truth seeker. I told her everything. I told her about Violet, who was using her inheritance to start a clean water initiative. I told her about Grant. I told her about the town, which was finally safe. I realized then that revenge isn't about hurting the other person. It's about balancing the scales. Victor took a life to save money. We took his money to save lives. The universe felt right again. I stood up and brushed the grass off my jeans. I wasn't angry anymore. The rage that had fueled me for months had burned out, leaving only a quiet, steady love. I wasn't a hunter anymore. I wasn't a soldier. I was just Mason. And for the first time since that Tuesday, I could breathe. 6 months later, the dust hadn't just settled. It had been washed away by the spring rains. The town of Oakhaven was healing. The for sale signs that had plagued our streets were gone. Families were moving back in. The water report came back clean for the first time in a decade. I sat on my porch, drinking coffee, watching the sunrise paint the valley in gold. I wasn't waiting for a surveillance van. I wasn't waiting for a hit squad. I was just waiting for the day to start. A car pulled up. Not a black sedan this time. A small, hybrid hatchback. Violet stepped out. She looked different. The purple hair was gone, replaced by her natural brunette. She wore jeans and a t-shirt, not the designer armor she used to hide behind. She carried a box of files. "Hey, Mason," she called out, waving. "Morning, Vi," I said. "Coffee's fresh." She walked up the steps and sat on the swing next to me. We didn't need to say much. We were bound by a shared ghost. "The final liquidation is done," she said, tapping the box. "We sold the estate. The land is being turned into a state park, named after her." I smiled. The Tessa Wild Nature Reserve. She would have hated the attention, but she would have loved the trees. "And the money?" she asked. "The settlement from the civil suit." "I told you," I said. "I don't want it. You have to take it, Mason. It's justice. It's millions of dollars." I looked out at my truck. It was still rusted, still old, but it ran. "Give it to the families," I said. "The ones who got sick. The ones who lost their homes because of your father's greed. Pay their medical bills. Send their kids to college." Violet nodded, tears in her eyes. "I already did, but there's still so much left." "Then build a library," I said. "A big one, with a section just for environmental science. And put her name on the door." Violet laughed. It was a genuine sound, light and free. "Okay, a library it is." She stood up to leave. She hesitated at the stairs. "You know," she said softly, "you didn't just save the town, Mason. You saved me. I was drowning in that house. I was just another one of his possessions. You showed me how to break the glass." "You broke it yourself, kid," I said. "I just handed you the hammer." She drove away, leaving me alone with the morning. I walked inside and went to the mantel. The photo of Tessa was there, the one from the gate. I had reframed it in simple oak. She was smiling at me. I touched the frame. "We did good, Tess," I whispered. "We did good." I went to the garage. I opened the safe. My rifle was there. My pistol. The tools of my old trade. I took them out. I spent the next hour disassembling them. Piece by piece. Spring by spring. I put the parts in different boxes. I wasn't going to sell them. I wasn't going to use them. I was going to bury them. I drove to the highest point of the North Ridge, the spot where she died. The spot that was now a park. I buried the firing pins deep in the earth, under a sapling oak tree. "No more hunting," I said to the wind. "No more war." I stood there for a long time, listening to the forest. It wasn't scary anymore. It was alive. I realized then that the best revenge wasn't seeing Victor in chains. It wasn't seeing his empire burn. The best revenge was living a good life. A quiet life. A life where I could sleep at night without checking the locks 3 times. Victor had tried to mount my wife's memory on his wall like a trophy. Instead, her memory had become the foundation of a new world. He was the prisoner. I was free. And as I walked back down the trail, for the first time, I didn't look back. Story finished word count. 750. This story of betrayal and quiet justice is over, but the fight for truth never really ends. I have a question for you. If you were Mason, would you have taken the millions of dollars for yourself? Or did he do the right thing by giving it away? What would be your form of quiet revenge? Let me know in the comments below. Also, tell me where you are watching from. I love seeing our community grow from all corners of the world.